Welcome to 10 JRPGs that didn't need a sequel. Some of these are great, others are straight up bad. But regardless, a follow-up was never necessary, and yet the developers made one. Or two. At least let's try to find out if the sequels were any good, so let's begin. Number 10, Blue Dragon. A lot of you still don't know this game got a sequel. Not only one, but two. Direct sequels, believe it or not. The strange thing is that for some reason they weren't released on the 360. They were exclusive to the Nintendo DS. An even stranger thing is that they weren't turn-based RPGs. Blue Dragon Plus was a real-time strategy RPG, one where you give orders or directions to your characters as you move across a giant tower, floor by floor, going down. It kinda resembles a roguelike, but not really, though it's very easy to get lost, and every time you re-enter a floor, you have to clear it again. I never liked this game. It isn't bad, but it's far from great. Honestly, this feels more like it should have been a little spin-off and not a direct sequel. I don't know what Hironobu Sakaguchi and company were thinking when creating this, with a totally different battle interface with lame-ass combat. It's not like Blue Dragon was the ultimate masterpiece that needed to be milked with more sequels to its story, which wrapped up pretty well in the first place. I don't recommend this game at all. The third one, however, called Awakening, it's kinda rare by the way, but it's now an action RPG. Yes, the story still continues with the same characters, but now your MC is a silent, customizable protagonist. This is a much better game than Plus, but it was still kinda unnecessary. Blue Dragon never needed one in the first place, like I said, let alone two sequels. At least Awakening, yeah, I do recommend this one, it's good. Number 9, Crystar. This obscure action RPG on PS4 and Switch is a good one. You control 4 girls fighting in a hack and slash or beat 'em up combat, traversing different dungeons in Purgatory. The story, focusing on Rei trying to find her sister, wrapped things up pretty well at the end. So it didn't need a direct sequel, but you know what? The developers knew that. So instead, they turned this obscure game, really obscure, into a series, and an indirect sequel, self-contained, was released as Cry Machina. Yeah, a convoluted action RPG with one of the worst balancing problems I've ever seen. It's stupidly easy and stupidly hard at the same time, completely illogical, at random, whenever, whatever. Story tried to be edgy, psychological and philosophical, but it was ruined by a lot of nonsensical Yuri garbage. At least the game wasn't terrible. I still finished it, kinda enjoyed it for what it was, and moved on. But I don't recommend it. I'm not sure what the developers were thinking when turning Crystar of all things into a series. Such an obscure and unsuccessful game, right? At least the sequel was its own thing in terms of story and universe, but it was honestly a complete waste of their time. Number 8, Persona 5. No, I'm not talking about the gazillion spin-offs this popular game has received. I'm not talking about the Royal Edition, which only added more content. I'm talking about Persona 5 Strikers, also known as Scramble in Japan, acting as, yes, a direct sequel. Unlike the spin-offs that take place at random moments within the original story, and the events aren't canon, Striker and the story happen right after Persona 5, so it is indispensable to play the first one first in order to understand this one, else you'll get a lot of spoilers. And well, now it's an action RPG, with Dynasty Warriors type of combat, as in fighting through hordes of enemies while summoning your personas. And you know what? It's actually a pretty damn good game, to be honest. I wish it could have been turn-based though, but for some reason the Atlus team wanted their own Warriors game because that was trending back then. Zelda did it, Dragon Quest did it, Fire Emblem did it, so Atlus wanted a piece of that pie. Well, thankfully guys, this sequel turned out to be great and I do strongly recommend it. Great combat, great controls, all of your playable characters, fantastic music and graphics. Dude, even on the Switch it looks freaking great. But let's be honest. Persona 5 didn't need a sequel of any kind, considering how stupidly long the game is. Nobody needed more of it. Nobody. Nope, not even you. Yes, you. You didn't need more Persona 5 games. Admit it. Number 7, Valhalla Knights. Yeah, I know you guys are unfamiliar with this game. Thank goodness it's a piece of shit and you should erase it from your memory with modern AI technology after watching this video. Yeah, you can do that nowadays, didn't you know? Anyway, this is one of the worst action JRPGs in history, exclusive to the PSP. Quest-driven, your silent protagonist goes into dungeons or ruins with generic party members that can be hired at the tavern. One of those, but bad. Really bad. By looking at this combat, you can already see for yourself it's really bad. You don't even need to play it or feel its horrendous controls to give it a hard pass. Well, believe it or not, it didn't just get one sequel, man. They made an entire series based on it! Every game is standalone in terms of story, they got nothing to do with each other. 2 is also on PSP, and well, it's slightly better, but still utterly mediocre and forgettable. A spin-off called Eldar Saga was released on Wii to the exact same results. Again, it improved somehow, but unfortunately there are a gazillion action RPGs that are far more better than this. Finally, Valhalla Knights 3 was released as a PS Vita exclusive, and finally, they got it right. Yeah, this is a good game, I do recommend it. With a more interesting plot about your character being a spy infiltrated in a prison city. It's a really tough game though, keep that in mind, but combat, graphics, music and everything is much better than in every single other Valhalla Knights game. Regardless, this should never have been turned into a series, considering the first game's bad reception and commercial failure. Number 6, the Caligula Effect. Another piece of trash that didn't need a sequel is this one, released originally on the PS Vita, later remastered for modern systems. I haven't touched those versions, just the PlayStation Vita version, it's ass! A bunch of students trapped in some kind of bizarre dimension that only they can see, turning other students into deranged monsters. Sounds cool, right? Which is exactly what got me into it. But then they inserted idle bullshit and poorly written dialogue that ruined it. Gameplay-wise, it's one of those where the hell do I go? Confusing, cryptic, and very annoying as you get into battles often with horrible combat. Look at it, look at this. I can't explain this. I never understood this combat, so I gave up. To make matters worse, every time you enter battle, an idol starts singing in various annoying ways. So the game got mixed to negative reviews and the world forgot about it until its remaster came out, and then a sequel, taking place in the same universe but with different characters and setting. Well, guess what? It's actually much better! Gameplay and especially combat are simply superior, as you do know where to go or what to do most of the time, and now it's a bit more simple to fight, but still with some twists like predicting actions and executing them in time to prevent a bad outcome. It's good, original! I mean, it isn't great or anything, but it's decent. Too bad whenever you enter battle, again, just like in the first game, idols sing and wear you out if you're not a fan of J-pop. I'm not. So I never finished this sequel, nor do I have any plans of ever doing so. But if you're into idols and J-pop, then sure, it's a good game. The Caligula Effect didn't need a sequel or even become a series, but at least the second game is better. Number 5, Fairy Fencer F. A fun compiled hard JRPG, good comedy, fan service, combat similar to the Neptunia series, yeah, it's fine. It was remastered on PS4, Switch and Steam several years ago. The story was fine and ended up with no real need for a direct sequel, but since the game got a bit popular than what Idea Factory expected, they made one. A terrible one. A grid-based strategy RPG with great combat actually, but with horrendous spikes. A never-ending grind fest where enemies are often 10 levels above you until you catch up after several hours of nothing but grinding. And if that wasn't enough, here's a story with inserted modern politics and fucking agendas with nonsensical pronouns. What a way to ruin a story. Well, it was already kinda ruined anyway, because now some idols are fighting each other out, and for some reason your characters are in the middle of it all, the characters from the first game? Yeah. Fairy Fencer F didn't need a sequel, or another game, or anything. It was fine being a standalone adventure. This abomination happened merely to milk an obscure game for almost non-existent so-called modern audiences, and the icing on the cake? They made it extremely and stupidly hard. Number 4, Final Fantasy XII. Yeah, the divisive Final Fantasy XII has a sequel, direct sequel. One where Vaan actually matters and the story revolves solely around him. Yeah, on the Nintendo DS, exclusive to it. Yeah, known as Revenant Wings. Yeah, a real-time strategy RPG like Blue Dragon Plus. Yeah, it's bad. No one ever needed a direct sequel to this game, starring the worst JRPG protagonist ever. The one thing most people, fans or haters of this game, agree with is that Final Fantasy XII had a shitty protagonist, and for some unimaginable reason, Square Enix thought it would be a good idea to create a direct sequel with Vaan once again as the star of the show. Well, at least he was the true star now, and not some background douchebag that was only there for unfunny comedic purposes. Now, is this game any good? No, I just told you it was bad. Well, okay, it isn't bad, maybe you'll like it. It's alright, I guess, but it's lame, boring, and why would you want to play a game with Vaan? Why? Number 3, Shin Megami Tensei 4. I've covered this game and Final Fantasy XII a lot this year, so I'll be very quick. This game didn't need a sequel, and Atlus just did one because it was successful, despite being very divisive at first. So Apocalypse came out and it was a masterpiece in my opinion. A much better game with improved mechanics, combat and gameplay. Sure, the story is still greater than the original, but this one, despite having a questionable cast, is just as fantastic. So to end this as quick as I said, I'll just say this. It's one of the best sequels ever made, period. But it honestly should have been its own thing. It should have had its own plot and story unrelated to 4. You know what? It should have been Shin Megami Tensei 5, and 5 should have been 6. The end. Number 2, Shadow Tower. Can't believe this. As if the ultra uber boring Kingsfield series wasn't enough, From Software made a spin-off with the exact same horrible gameplay mechanics, and it was worse than any Kingsfield game. This is a horrible RPG, and the worst action RPG I've played in my life. Wait, no. That honor goes to Virtual Highlight on the Saturn. Another series that never needed any sequels of any kind, you know? Cause you know what, this Shadow Tower is at least somewhat playable, but completely unenjoyable. No music, no plot, just a bare bones first person atrocity. Yes, it's so hard to believe. I know, but it's in this video for a reason. They made a sequel, exclusive to the PS2, only in Japan. thankfully only in Japan. I never thought I would ever say that, you know? It never left Japan! Yeah! It's more of the same. First-person boredom, lame combat, slow exploration. I'm getting sleepy just by writing this. Bad games don't need sequels. Make another game instead. Oh wait, they did. It only took them 15 years though to get it right. Number 1, Final Fantasy X. The last Final Fantasy game Squaresoft did before they boarded their legendary train wreck. One that is still going at full speed nowadays. The best way they could come up with to ruin a perfectly tragic and emotional ending was to develop a direct sequel. To make things right, with rainbows and sunshine, with idols. So is the game bad at least? Yeah, and it's overrated. Kindly stick your "the battle system is great" up your ass, please. As if you've never seen a good battle system in your damn life. But you know, perhaps that is the only good thing people can say about this piece of trash. That's why whenever this game comes into a conversation, people always say that. Oh, the battle system is great. They have nothing else to say because honestly, there is absolutely nothing else redeemable. So it's like they're trying to make themselves feel better after playing it by saying that, or justifying the fact that they played it at all. Imagine if the direct sequel to Lost Odyssey was Omega Quintet. Well, yeah, that's exactly what Squaresoft did with Final Fantasy X. You want an even worse example than that in case you didn't know those two games? Imagine Chrono Cross didn't exist and the direct sequel to Chrono Trigger was Hyper Dimension Neptunia. Anyway, Final Fantasy X is a game that didn't need a sequel in the first place. I can't think of a better honorable mention than Final Fantasy XIII. Yeah, no explanations required. Thanks for watching.